All right, last day before we go on break. This is the first thing that I'm going to talk about today. I randomly thought about it during like a one-on-one yesterday, so I wanted to share it with you all. I think it might be too late for you all to use this, but good to know for the next project. So some of your data sets have a lot of null values or a lot of like, meaningless zero values where people use zero instead of null, or like have like some other placeholder for missing data. And one way that you can get over that might be a little more scientific is by using K nearest neighbors imputation. So basically, and this is a really, really good article that really explains all the different kinds of missing values and also like how KNN imputation works. But the main idea is if you have a missing value in, let's say, column X, but you have ABC values, you have other ABC columns, to fill in the null values of X in a certain row, it'll look to see which are the nearest neighbors to this row with the missing value, and then basically impute that with the rows that are similar, if that makes sense. I can't really explain it in sentences, but read this, it'll make sense. It basically uses nearest neighbors to fill in null values. So basically it will help with your separation of data and also help overall maintain the distribution of your values within
I
your
looked
data
at
space.
doing the KNN for mine. Is it easy? Would it be like an easy thing to implement now?
I
Because I
think,
originally did the median, but I wanted to go back and see if I could find a better way to put in those missing values. Is it fairly easy
yeah,
to implement?
it is pretty easy to implement. If you see here, this is not where they're doing it. Yeah, you're instantiating an imputer object, and then you're just doing
Okay.
like your fit transform just like that.
Okay.
So you
Cool.
can
You
treat
have to
it
pick
like,
the nearest neighbors.
yeah, that one, it's not something that you can tune because you can't verify missing values. The
Okay.
default is 5, so I'd say might as well use 5, and I'll just like look at your 5 nearest neighbors, and it'll just take the whichever one occurs more to be the imputed value. Or I think if it's if it is continuous variable that has missing values, it might, I think it takes the average as well. But this article, I think, explains it really well. And yeah, it looks like they have references. And yeah, it has, KNN Imputer has its own documentation page on scikit-learn as well.
Okay, great.
Does this work for categorical and continuous data, like text data, string data?
Yes, this will work for, I'm not sure. I think if it's categorical as strings, I'm not 100% sure if you need to one-hot encode before or after, to be honest. I think if it's as a category type, it should be okay, but I personally haven't done this in a while, so I'm not sure. I haven't like actually done a project with this in it either, so I'm not too sure. Do look at the documentation. Actually, let's pull that up. KNN Imputer. So it looks like it's gotta take in, right, missing values. I would just trial and error it, honestly. I'm not too sure whether how it would treat string data. Yeah, not too sure.
Does it act on your full data frame, or can you specify certain columns you want it to just pay attention to?
That's a good question. I think it looks like it can work on your entire data frame. You should not do it for your entire data frame. Well, I guess if this is a method you want to use for all your columns, then sure, do it on your whole data frame. But it looks like you can't tell it which columns to do. So you might have to give it a subset of your data frame. I saw a question on the guidelines that was about scaling specific columns. And I actually, through Googling this, I found that there's something called a column transformer where you can actually pass in if you want to do, you know, different scaling for different columns, you can pretty much use that imputer in this way, I'm pretty sure as well, since these are all scikit-learn things. So it might be something interesting. I've personally never used column transformer. Usually if I want to do different scaling for different subsets of my data set, I would like literally pull out the columns and concat the data frame together afterwards. So yeah, if anyone's interested to try this, if you're using different scalars for different columns, do that. And you can see here with this column transformer, any of the columns that you don't list here, any columns that you don't list here, you can just have it not do anything. So yeah, this is linked in the guideline doc here. Any questions regarding that? So yeah, this is also the answer for like how to scale just specific columns. I personally would have just split up my data frame and subset it manually because I didn't know about this column, what's it called again? This column transformer. But yeah, I think that would be a cool thing to try out. If you already have an intuition of how you want to scale different parts of your data set. Any questions about that? Basically, we talked about one, what KNN imputation is, a different way of imputing your null values, and also scaling subsets of your full data frame.
If we scale our categorical data, I think it doesn't hurt your modeling.
Yeah, it doesn't really. It doesn't really, because if you're scaling your categorical data, your zeros and ones would just be like, all of the ones would be transformed to some decimal number. All your zeros would be transformed to another decimal number. So in terms of like the separability, it's still the same, especially for tree models. For like something like KNN or SVM where it's distance based, it could weight your categories different based on, you know, literally because they calculate standard deviation by like, I mean, the mean and standard deviation is affected by like the proportions of zeros and ones that you have in a single column. So that's how you end up with all those different values. And if you were to do something like standard scalar, then every column would have like a different distance in space for just being 0 or 1, if that makes sense. But for tree models, it won't affect it.
Yes.
Cool. Any other questions? Cool. All right. Another question. Grid search CV works with what models? Every model that we talked about. If someone has a grid search CV, does someone have a grid search that doesn't work? Who like put this? And I'll actually link. It works with every model that's in the model summary sheet. So let me just put that there. Every model in this phase. All right. Okay. So this I talked about. All right. So here, looking at feature importances, and I think the next two are on feature importances. So for decision trees, and if you're getting 6 features on the chart, and then random forest, you have more variables registering as important. Is this to be expected? Yes, it is. So with a decision tree, you imagine it's a very top-down greedy approach, right? You're looking for the best splits at each time. And with the one tree, you know, the way that you evaluate your feature importances is like looking at the relative information gain for each feature. And so for a decision tree, because it's very top-down, the additional information gain that can happen from any other variable gets less just by the nature of like, it's a very top-down approach. Random forest, because it shows more variables, it shows more variables because you're training multiple trees, each with a different subset of variables. So in a bunch of trees, what would be your most important feature from your decision tree wouldn't even be considered in some of your, well, it won't be considered as your main splitting feature for a bunch of your trees, depending on like what your max features number is. So because of that, yes, it makes a lot more sense that your random forest is considering a lot of other variables in the classification when it's trying to make a classification. So that's that is to be expected. That's also partially what stops random forest from overfitting as much as a decision tree does, because decision trees usually right off the bat will overfit, especially when you do a max depth of none. Any questions about that, like intuition, before we talk about the next thing? All right, so for feature importance, this is for the model overall. Is there a way to get a sense of feature importance per class in the target variable? Ooh, that's a good question. So feature importance is for the model overall, yes. Feature importance per class, I would say, because feature importances are derived from it, the feature importance is derived by the information gain of the tree, or of that the feature provides for your trees or for your forest or whatever. So because of that, the way information gain is calculated is by looking at Gini or entropy across all of your variables. So therefore, I don't think that you can get a feature importance per class. You probably won't be able to get something like what's the thing I was thinking about? Oh, like the classification report where you can see like per class your precision recall. I don't think you would be able to get something like that. But with your most important features, if you were to see which of your, like maybe plot your top 3 or 4 important features and look at their distribution amongst the different classes, you can usually sort of derive and say like, all right, yeah, this feature is important in helping divide these classes away from like these other classes. So you might be able to figure that out through EDA, but at least not that I'm aware of. I don't think there's a way to get that information directly from the model. That's for this. So unfortunately, no. But you can do post-modeling EDA to perhaps derive, to maybe get this information. All right, any questions about that? Cool. Next one's also kind of about feature importances. Some strategies for tuning a model now that you know which features are important to the model. So in some industries and in some projects, you want to reduce your model complexity as much as possible, right? Like you want to reduce the redundancy, you want to reduce having like a bunch of extra columns that don't really contribute much to your model. So one thing that you can do is after you have your feature importances, literally like maybe cut off the ones that are not contributing to your model at all. Maybe you want to decide to, maybe you want to even like sacrifice some of your model complexity, sacrifice a little bit of your like accuracy metrics or maybe your recall or something to have like a much less complex model. You can definitely do that. Depending on which your model is, it may or may not have a big effect. Like for example, if you were doing a decision tree and you cut out the features that are not important, you're not likely going to see a big change. If you do this for something like random forest, if you're taking away a bunch of the features, because random forest does a random subset of features, your model might change quite drastically just because let's say you cut out like half of your columns. Your model might have a pretty drastic change. Again, it does depend on your context, but that's something that you can do with the information from the important features. Because again, if you're removing like columns that aren't that important, your model will run faster. When you retrain your model, it'll retrain a lot faster too. That's actually something that like a lot of people do in practice. You often have to like retrain your model with updated data. So yeah, that's something that you could do. So just perhaps rerun your models without the less important features. Questions about this so far? All right. So somebody ran cross-validation to test tree depth values for decision tree model. That is a good thing to do. Chart started low and then went up and did not plateau until a depth of 15. That seems really deep. Is it a reasonable result? So the depth of the tree, especially if it's a single decision tree, it depends on how many features you have. So, and actually in some ways also how many data points you have. So let's say you have 100 features and you tune your decision tree model and you have a depth of 15. That means you're only really splitting, I guess you're splitting on the depth of 15 number of times. So if you have a lot of features, relatively a depth of 15 might not be that much. So it does depend on the number of features that you have. If you have like, I don't know, like 5 features and you have a depth of 15, then that seems like overkill because it seems like it's gonna like resplit on features over and over again. But it, again, will depend on how many features you have. Will depend on how many features you have. And also, it's important when you're tuning, and especially when you're tuning max depth, check for overfitting, because max depth is what will lead to overfitting. So check for overfitting, compare your train and test metrics to see if there is still predictive power. So very likely your, let's see, this was your, I'm guessing maybe accuracy became 76%. Is your test set also around 76%, or is it much worse? So what happens if you have like a very, very deep tree? Usually what happens is your test metrics will end up looking a lot lower. So take note of that. Questions about this? Cool. All right, question here about decision tree plots. I'm still looking up that string IO thing. I haven't gotten much time between meetings the past couple of days. This is a problem that multiple people have. I know through 101s that multiple people are having this issue. Found this blog that has 4 different ways to, I guess 3 different ways to plot your trees. So maybe try these. Oh, this looks cool. I've never seen this before. But yeah, perhaps try some of these. I am not super well versed in like the coding of trees, and I know like the line's not appearing. That's a weird error, and I'm honestly not sure what that is from. So maybe try some of these visualizations. I will say visualizing a tree is only important for your decision tree model, just because in everything else you're aggregating a bunch of trees. So if you want to do this, just try these different libraries and see what works. That's my advice. So yes, I've linked that here. All right, having the trouble getting table of contents. I don't know if Mark, you're the one that put this here, because I know you're having this error, and I have been looking it up and I haven't figured out why yours is like that. But if someone else is having that issue, Mark is also having this issue.
Yeah, I don't think I put that there, so it must be somebody else.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because this is the exact same error that you're getting as well,
I was
Mark,
just
right?
not really sure if that had happened to anyone else, but yeah.
Okay.
Or did you
Yeah.
put it in your command prompt, or did you put it in your Jupyter notebook?
I put it in the terminal.
Okay.
Then yeah, I just couldn't think. Yeah, the following step, I just couldn't get to that because of that error.
Yeah.
Like the NB extensions thing. Just couldn't find that in there because of that, I think.
Yeah, I looked,
Great.
I did a bit of Googling for a little bit. I'm not too sure what it is that is causing it. I think because if it's a permission denied issue, are you guys the like admin on your computer?
I should be, but yeah, okay. I saw Tim posted something in the
Yeah.
in the group chat. Okay, I'll try it in Anaconda.
Yeah, I know it's like kind of annoying if that one doesn't work, but also not like, it's not like a project thing. But yes, it will be very, very helpful to have these table of contents. So yeah, I mean, I'm also going to just be Googling this error, and like I sent Mark a couple like things to try, which haven't worked. So yeah, if I have time, well, later today, I'm going to be getting through all of the questions that people have been slacking me and all of your notebooks. So yes, by end of tonight, I will have hopefully an answer for you all who are having this issue. All right, let's see. Oh, Ali, the table of contents is basically in the Jupyter notebooks. Let me just launch a Jupyter notebook. In a Jupyter notebook, and I think this is Mark's notebook. I hope you don't mind me opening this, but basically it gives you this table of contents here, where you can like click through, click to like the section that you want to go to. And it just makes your life easier, like navigating your long notebook. Yeah, so highly recommend this, especially as your notebooks are getting much longer with this project. Nice. All right. I think those are all of the questions on here. Yeah, does anyone else have any questions or like project concerns? Let's see. Oh, I've also put a couple example presentations here, just in case y'all wanted to refer to something. I will say in the past, because these are projects from like about a year ago, in the past, it wasn't a part of the rubric to make model-driven recommendations. So you might not see that in these presentations, but that's something that we realize that like students need to know how to do. So that's why you have that. So keep that in mind. No recommendations slide, but you have to do that. All right, let's see. Yeah, any other questions? Let's see if there's nothing in the next 2 minutes.
Ish, I have a question. You provided a list that you asked some questions along the course.
Yeah.
Where can I find it?
That is a great question. I will put it in the homeroom. I'll put the link in the homeroom. But yeah, you're talking about this list, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. These are the common interview questions. And a lot of the interview questions will come from, honestly, last phase and this phase. So this kind of stuff. So yeah, there won't be too much to add in phase 4, but if there are any, I'll put them here. But yeah, I'll put this link, I'll link it somewhere on the homeroom for you all.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Let's see. Yeah, anything else? I'll probably put it like down here. All right, well, we are only like half an hour in. So I don't know if anyone has very like project specific questions that they have, feel free to share that as well. Just to like, I don't know, just because I have this time with you all here. I don't know if anyone has any very like, it doesn't have to be very general.
I'm just curious as to how everyone's modeling is going. Like, are you guys getting really good accuracy or good results from your data sets, or not so far?
Feel free to like drop it in the chat as well. Maybe like on a scale of 1 to 5, how well you think your models are doing. From like what I've seen in all the one-on-ones, everyone's processes are good. Everyone's processes are good. That's the main thing I'm looking out for. In terms of results, I care a little less, but I understand that like everyone wants to get good results.
Yeah, I definitely feel like for mine that my vanilla models are just like almost as good as it gets, and then all the tuning I do afterwards like doesn't improve them significantly.
Yeah. I will say like if you are done like with grid search and you find that grid search didn't really help, typically the next best approach would to be go back into your data and like clean out outliers and make sure that you don't have any like noisy data, or maybe like subset your data in a different way.
Yeah,
That could be something that you do.
that at least on the last project was like the biggest thing that I think helped.
Awesome.
Was like all of the data cleaning parts.
Yeah, so that's definitely something that y'all can think of. Definitely not necessary for this project, because I just need to see, like, for my purposes to pass your project, I just need to see the modeling processes and like your interpretation of that. But yeah, if you really want to just like really get your model to predict well, do that. And a lot of you are using data sets that are, one, the provided data sets from Flatiron School, and also just common Kaggle data sets. A lot of you found your data off of Kaggle. You can probably look up projects done on your data set to just, if you want to compare some results and maybe get inspiration for from how other people are doing it.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, Tim here mentions Teapot. I think I mentioned it like at the very start, I don't remember, but Teapot basically automates the whole modeling process even more, where you can tell it all of the models that you want it to run, give it like, and it does all the models, grid search for all of them, takes hours and hours to run, but then it'll just in one like block of code give you your best model. I don't know if Tim, did you end up actually using it? Yeah, it's cool, but like I do see some pros and cons. Wow. I do see some pros and cons. Cons being that like you don't have as hands-on of an experience doing this modeling. But wow, extra trees.
Classifier.
Extra trees is it's like random forest, but they introduce an additional point of randomness. I forget where, but they introduce more randomness somewhere in the algorithm. I've read it before, but I don't remember what it is. With polynomial features. Nice. Wow. But yeah, that's, if anyone is interested in that, feel free. It is a bit of work setting up. I don't know if Tim has like anything to say about it. I personally have not used it. I just know from what students say, but I hear it's a little bit of work to set up. But yeah, polynomial features, what they're doing is, I think they're literally like doing the polynomial features like we did for linear regression, multiplying each feature by itself and with each other. So it's sort of like looking at interactions as well. But nice, yeah, it also helps you with like your pipeline, because polynomial features could be a part of your pipeline as well. It's really intense, but fun coding practice, I think.
We could have just learned Teapot.
But then you wouldn't have learned the model. Honestly, yeah. And Teapot, I think it's not by scikit-learn. Let me just do a quick Google. Yeah, I believe Teapot is not by scikit-learn, but yeah, it comes under this whole group of algorithms called AutoML, or not algorithms, or just like functions or things that programmers have created to like further automate the machine learning process. But yeah, it is not by scikit-learn, but it does all of that.
It's amazing.
But okay. I mean, this is one of the things where like I feel like students, good to know for the future, but for a project, if I see this, I'm like, what am I gonna grade you on? But good to know that it exists for sure. I guess since we're talking about something like Teapot, something that some of you might get mad at that exists is pandas profiling. I don't know if anyone has heard of it, but pandas profiling is automated EDA. We do recommend that students don't use this because it's important to do the EDA on your own, but let's see if this has an example of what it looks like. Right.
There's also AutoViz that like creates all the graphs for you too.
Oh,
No way.
nice.
Oh my God.
Yeah, but yeah, pandas profiling will give you like, I know it, I guess it gives it to you in like widgets. And then you can just see everything about your data set. Not super in-depth, but it's like a really good like overview one. But I feel like EDA is better to be like a little bit more hands-on and guided by some context rather than like, here's all the visualizations. So yeah, do with this information what you will. Pandas profiling.
Steer,
Let me
I like
just-
your tree. It's so pretty.
Thanks. Picked it out myself. Not really.
Awesome.
What was that you mentioned, Stephen? AutoViz? Can we see some of
Yeah.
that?
What's it called?
I can share my screen. I have
Oh, yeah.
a lab that has it, or not
Feel
a lab,
free,
but a
Steven.
notebook.
Really effective over there.
There it is. Can you see it?
Ah.
This. So yeah, so I just saw that this person did it and I tried it out and it kind of worked, but I didn't have a lot of continuous variables, so it was pretty like scant. But you pretty much just like put in the data frame and it pops out all these graphs.
Cool.
For like each of the categories.
Wow.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And you can also save them too, like individually, so you can just pull out the specific plots you want.
Nice. Thanks for sharing.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have something like auto interpreter or something like that?
To interpret
Yeah.
your data. I think that like
Everything.
I wouldn't be surprised if something like that becomes a thing in the next like 5 years, where like the data scientist's job is completely redundant. But I don't know. Excited for that technological advancement, not excited about, you know, me being rendered useless. Machine learning to automate a machine to do all my machine learning for me. That is kind of like gradient boosting in a way. But yeah, once we get to neural networks, you can also set things up like that, and then you can literally like give it anything, and it'll do it for you.
So Tim, did you just like go lay down then while you were waiting for your thing to load? Like you just hung out or made snacks or?
No, I actually did the project while this thing was running.
Oh, so you did the project on the side?
Yeah, I'm not like skipping the project. I was just curious what the machine would bring up, and then I was going to actually do it. It's more of, at best, it's a guideline. It's more of a curiosity than anything. I'm still putting in the work.
Good. But yeah, I know like at some companies, they don't care what model you use, just that you get results. And in that kind of scenario, sure, use all of these AutoML tools. But like, you know, when you have to be more involved with like the interpretation and like deciding what to do with your models, then you want to not do that. So, yeah, useful in some instances, for sure. I will say all of these things like pandas profiling, teapot are all from like students not wanting to do the hard work, and then they just like Google something and they find it, and then I look at their projects, I'm like, do you know what you just did? And a lot of times, I mean, yeah, important to like still look through your results. I think as long as you're looking through your results, I would say that's not the worst thing in the world. But yeah, anything else? Any other questions?
I'm struggling a little bit with lemmatizing still. If you want to take a look at the NLP stuff.
Sure, yeah. It'll be a little preview for everybody here as well.
I destroyed my notebook this morning trying to figure it out.
Does that mean that your kernel die?
No,
Or
just
okay,
like I made it super messy.
okay. We'll be getting into all of this NLP stuff at the early mid next phase, I think is where NLP is. But basically with NLP, each word becomes a column and literally you can throw the same thing into all the same models that we're doing this phase. And lemmatizing is basically the process of, I don't know linguistics, but basically like, you know, if you have a word of like run and running and ran, you basically will turn each word into its base form. So like run, running, and ran will all be considered the same word. So you don't have like additional features with like pretty much the same meaning. Yeah, like reducing conjugations. Yep, just like that. So Stephen is having an issue with lemmatizing his words.
Yeah, so there's a couple different ways I was trying to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Actually, before I do this, because it messes up when I do it this way. I think that's right. So I was working with this with the NLP toolkit.
Mm-hmm.
And I was having issues because I needed to tag do the POS tagging, because otherwise lemmatizing it wasn't doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and so I found this way and it works with the tagging and it joins it, but then it has like weird properties where I can't, where it separated each of the words into their individual characters. And then I was trying to think of how I could fit that back together. And then the other issue I'm running into is this method puts it into a list. And so after it's in a list, I'm having trouble then lemmatizing it. Because it says like expect string gets list.
Okay. Let me just see how I lemmatize my data. So
there's been a lot of Stack Overflow articles.
Oh
Is
yeah.
this your notebook,
Yeah.
Stephen? Or is this Ish?
Yeah, this is mine.
Okay.
Why is this still running?
That's really interesting. I didn't know that strings are iterable. Yes, they are.
Strings are iterable. Not many people need to iterate on strings, so we don't really use it very much. Sometimes I think it could be even like more annoying that it's iterable. But yeah. What is the lemmatizer that you're using, Stephen? Are you using WordNet?
This is WordNet, but then I was also going to try out Spacey, which actually Spacey works pretty well, but then I was trying to figure out what to do from there.
If Spacey works, then you're good.
But yeah, I got it for each of the, I think like what I'm having trouble with is the workflow. So like tokenizing, so you tokenize first, then remove stop words, and then lemmatize. But what I'm having issues with is then you have to tag before that. And so like that step between, I was trying to go from this string of code, which works, but it doesn't, so it doesn't lemmatize it, but it works. And that's like where I concatenated everything and it worked down here like this. But then when I tried to put it into Spacey to like tag and then lemmatize, that's when I was getting the error because it's in a list form and it says expect string.
Because this stop words removed is in a list form and expects a string.
Yeah. So like this is what I get when I try and lemmatize it after removing stop words and tokenizing.
I see. And it's thinking, so right now you're feeding in a list instead of a string.
Yeah, so it's a list for each row, a list of the words.
So a list of individual words?
Yes, for this method, but then the other method doesn't work. This made it split each of these into individual strings. Like each character became its own string.
Does it do the same for spaces as well, or just the letters?
Like this.
So
this is what happened after I lemmatized it. So the first word is print, but it broke it up as this. And then the other way where I just did the stop words and tokenized it, it came out like this.
Okay, I think you would want to have this be your starting point,
This one?
because that's already lemmatized. No, not lemmatized yet.
No.
So
it's
then you
not
would,
yet.
so you would take these tokenized words, and tokenized is basically like when you create, yeah, when you just have like a list of words is the process of tokenizing. So with your list of words, you should be able to, because when you are using, so for the wordlet lemmatizer, you have to do it word by word.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so, and then so that's what I was trying to do, was then go back and use that column in the data frame
Yeah.
to then run this lemmatization with a tagging, because I
Mhm.
lemmatized it without tagging and it wasn't changing anything.
That,
Like it stayed the same, like each column was identical.
okay. Interesting. What if you use like, okay. So can you not tag the words when they're in like the list of tokens?
I probably could, I haven't tried that yet. So this was like the tagging code I was using.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I would have to figure out how to throw it in. This is what returned that result that you said I should start from.
Yeah.
Although actually I messed with it. I don't want that. I was trying to also tokenize or run lemmatization in this
Okay.
function too.
Honestly, there is probably code of doing this exact thing somewhere in the solutions of like some of the lessons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I should probably go through the lessons because I've been trying to find it from Stack Overflow and they're not always the most helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've changed this code around so much that I don't know if any of this runs anymore.
All good, all good. But yeah, when you have, where you have the tokens, I would say like, that's a good place to like, what's the word? Milestone it, save point, checkpoint, yeah. And then work off of that, because then you can tag and lemmatize each word from there. You could even do it in like a list comprehension per row.
Okay. Another thing I noticed is when I lemmatized it, it took something like ISIS and put it to EC or ISI. And I didn't know if there's like ways you can put exceptions and like hand code exceptions.
Those, yeah, those are, they might actually be English words. I don't know, but those basically, it's likely not to turn up a lot. So once you have your table set up with like your lemmatized words and like vectorized, you can filter out that way.
Okay, this should work. Yeah. So there's my unique.
What does lematize do?
Yeah.
It takes away like the base. Here, I have an example in this code. So here it shows this is lemmatizing it.
Okay.
And so you have loving, and see this is before you tag it as a verb. And so it stays as loving. But when you tag it as a verb, it puts it back to its like base, its root. And so it becomes love.
Oh.
And so like am, for example, will be reverted back to be, I believe. Yeah, right here.
Is there a library for that, or we should functionalize it?
The library. Well, it's
Yeah.
a library that has this lemmatized method, but you have to functionalize it to have it apply to everything.
So like right up here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
I'm surprised there isn't a simpler version, like import Oxford Dictionary.
Honestly, the way
then-
I do it, I just assume everything I tag them all as verb. So, or I think some people tag them all as like, I think verb is probably the most common one. Yeah,
Y-
that's what
yeah,
that's what I've done.
So I guess I'll just try and go from here. I mean, like I can do it without lemmatizing this, and that's where and just run the model and see what happens, because I don't think it honestly will change that much. But I'm stubborn. This is interesting with Spacey. It puts things as pronoun. So this is an example of Spacey working. So striped goes to stripe, bats goes to bat, R goes to B, hanging, hang. But then I don't know like what would happen with this. I guess you'd just have to filter it
Fair.
out because you'd have a bunch of pronouns.
Looks like it. Well, cool. I think just playing around, because the lemmatize, yeah, you got it working on small examples, right? So I think just working on a function to expand that. I'll look at the lessons, because there is some code that I know works that's in there, and the ones that I
Okay.
did with my project are from the lessons.
That first one that's working, that's from the lessons.
Nice. Yeah, honestly, like this format of like debugging code during like an office hour, very, very common, especially like when we get to the capstone phase. A lot of the office hours will be like us all like working through stuff like this. So if anyone has a very stubborn issue, feel free. Cool, thanks for sharing, Stephen.
Are we going to learn these things in the future?
Yeah, we are going to learn this in the next phase. So
Yeah, it's
let me
really
see.
interesting to take out information about out of the text data. Yeah,
it is super interesting. I love NLP stuff, and that comes, I think, in the second week. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Second week of phase 4. We'll look at text data, and I feel like the NLP that they talk about is not enough. So during either like office hours when we're working on the project, or even in the capstone, I'll be like expanding a lot more on NLP, because I think for some of your projects it will be helpful.
thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else? Lots of interesting stuff to look forward to. We start off like the next phase with 4 very, very different topics. So we'll have a lot to learn then. Yes, any final questions? Again, if you need anything, I will be getting back to anything that is messaged to me today. So I will be answering questions probably pretty late today, so that's fine. So if you have something, do send it to me by today and I'll get back to you. But yeah, any final questions? Going once, going twice. All right then, well, everybody have a good break. I hope not all of it is spent working on this project. Do also know that, to pass a project is not hard. If you just look at the rubric and see what's needed, don't burn yourself out on this project, because we have 2 more projects to go. And if you feel like you want to spend more time with this classification material, some of the projects, the next phase, like we just saw with NLP, you'll still be using the same model. So if you feel like you didn't get a deep enough dive on that material this phase, next phase, you still have time to do that. But yeah, I hope you all have a good break week. Happy holidays, no matter what you're celebrating. And I will see you all either at later 101s or at, I guess, next week when we get back. Probably on, I guess by the end of today, I'll post like a presentation order, because the presentations are split up into 2 days. I'll do it random, but I'll also make sure like the different data sets are spread out across the 2 days, just so you can like prepare for that. All right, then have a good holiday week, everybody. And I'll see you all next year. Bye.
you.
Happy
Thank you.
Bye,
holidays.
thank you.
Good one, bye.
Bye.